Hi, welcome back to Burning River Bushcraft. Today I'd like to discuss hunting with vintage compound bows. So when I refer to vintage compound bows, I'm speaking of bows manufactured in the 80s to early 90s. This is a Bear Kodiak. This was probably manufactured in the late 80s. So when I decided to buy a vintage compound bow, I started looking at different brands. I actually picked this up on eBay for $15. I paid more to ship the bow to me than I paid for the bow itself. So all told, this was about $30, maybe a little bit less to get this here. Came with a stabilizer. I wanted a original, vintage 80s Cobra sight. Couldn't find one easy. I got impatient and I bought this old Bear sight. What I wanted was pins that adjusted with screws, with a thumb knurl screw, as opposed to like a check-it sight that we used to use that you would have to adjust with an Allen wrench. I was looking for more wilderness, long-term use with this, so I wanted to have as few moving parts that needed tools as possible. For a rest, I went with the old Bear weather rest. It was cheap. It seemed like it kind of fit the purpose of the bow, and it shoots real good with it on. Now, I am not running a peep with this setup. Again, I wanted to keep it super simple. I do get a little bit of lateral drift with my arrows, but as long as I maintain a good anchor point, that's really not an issue. And again, I'm shooting fingers. I am not using a mechanical release. I haven't shot fingers on a compound bow since I was about 10. So I switched to a mechanical release early in the game and never looked back. And now I guess I'm trying to step back in time just to entertain myself. So some of the advantages to a vintage compound bow, number one is going to be price. Like I said, I've got less than $30 in this bow, and it shoots as good as it did in the mid-80s. Deers died then. Hopefully we're going to have a deer die this fall with this thing. So cost is number one. Number two, for me, is simplicity and familiarity. I can look at this, I can work on anything of this bow. This is not the most durable wheel, but again, parts are available for this because this is a less desirable bow. Like I said before, the pins are all adjustable by hand. No tools needed. If I wanted to crank it down with a multi-tool or loosen something with a multi-tool, that's an option for me. So don't overlook vintage compound bows just because they've got wheels and cables. They're still a simple, durable bow. This bow is over 30 years old and it still shoots as good today as it did the day it was made. The big advantage for me is the sights. When I shoot recurves, I'm not an instinctive shooter. It just doesn't come natural to me. I grew up shooting pins. I've got sights on my guns. I look for a sight on my bow. When I'm shooting recurve with no sights, I end up either walking the string, so guessing the yardage and going up and down on the string, or using the tip of the arrow as a reference point and then going up or down from there. I do the same thing with slingshot. So I don't put in the time to instinctively shoot a recurve. Therefore, the pins let me accurately place arrows at longer range. So for me, archery's almost been a devolution. Instead of evolving, I'm devolving. I started with the high-tech stuff, adjustable scope in the front, overdraws, all through the late 80s, early 90s. Got out of archery for a little bit, got back into it with recurves. No sights, wanted to stay basic with it. And it's fun for me as a hobby, but viability of taking game with that, I've shrunk my distance down to under 20 yards. I'm not comfortable shooting past that range. So stepping back in time but still staying basic to me seems to be a happy medium right now. So I went back to vintage equipment, basic everything, basic sights, basic rest, back to fingers again, and it seems to be working. So hopefully this thing will fill the freezer. So next time you see some of these old vintage bows at flea markets or garage sales, give them a second look. They're super durable, inexpensive, they shoot really well, and they'll definitely get the job done in the field. This has been Jamie Boggs with Burning River Bushcraft. See you next time.